The ABA during its heyday was one of the most entertaining things to watch on TV during the late 60s and mid-70s. The league provided a competitive alternative to the NBA, introducing concepts that they would later adopt, like the dunk contest, the 30-second shot clock, and the three-point line. However, most of these teams were poorly ran. The constant mismanagement of players and money led to many teams folding by 1975, as the ABA was bankrupt by 1976 and forced to merge with the NBA. In today's episode, we'll discuss the Virginia Squires, a team that probably had the most talent in ABA history, as they had Rick Barry, Warren Jabali, Doug Moe, Charlie Scott, Julius Irving, and George Gervin. However, the team had struggled financially for years, even before they moved to Virginia, leading to them making desperate trades for cash, as this would alienate the fans and attendance would drop tremendously. Some of the players even sued the team because their paychecks bounced, leading to the ultimate demise of the Squires in May 1976. This is PG Hoops, and welcome to my new series called ABA Tales. The Virginia Squires started out as the Oakland Oaks in 1967, as this name was taken from a team in the defunct ABL that folded in 1962. Famous singer Pat Boone, who was the only musician on par with Elvis in terms of popularity in the 50s, was awarded the franchise on February 2nd, 1967. Around this time, the San Francisco Warriors were about to lose their star forward Rick Barry. He had just come off a season averaging 36 points a game as the Warriors lost to Wilt Chamberlain and the 76ers in the finals. Rick was upset that the Warriors refused to pay the incentive-based bonuses in his contract, so he had signed with the Oakland Oaks of the new ABA as they were coached by Bruce Hale, his former coach at the University of Miami, becoming the league's first star. The move was seen as greedy and selfish by most, but it would be the first instance of player autonomy that is normalized today. But at the time, the NBA had declared Barry's move as a breach of his contract, and the Warriors were allowed to invoke an option clause that prevented him from playing for the Oaks in 1967. So instead of playing his last option year with San Francisco, Rick chose to sit out the season, becoming a radio announcer for the Oaks. Rick's move would give the ABA more legitimacy as a viable alternative, leading to more star players foregoing the NBA and playing there instead. The Oaks joined the newly formed ABA, being led by Laverne Tart, Jim Hadnot, and Ira Harge. Laverne averaged 27 points a game, while Jim averaged 17 and 12, but the Oaks were the worst defensive team in the league, finishing 22 and 56. With the addition of Rick, the Oaks became one of the best teams in the league seemingly overnight. They also traded for All-Star forward Doug Moe along with 5'9" guard Larry Brown. They also signed Warren Jabali from Wichita State, an extremely strong and athletic guard packed into a 6'2" frame. Although the Oaks still had the worst defense in the league, giving up 118 points a game, they had the best offense, scoring almost 127 points a game. Oakland finished the season with a league-best 60-18 record. Rick led the league in scoring with 34 points a game, while Warren averaged 22 points and 10 rebounds as a 6'2" guard, winning the Rookie of the Year award. Doug Moe averaged 19 and 8, while Larry led the league in assists. But Oakland wouldn't have their best player going into the playoffs as Rick tore his ACL 35 games into the season. The Oaks faced the Denver Rockets in the Western Division semifinals, led by Larry Jones and Byron Beck. The Oaks won in 7 games as Jabali stepped up tremendously in Rick's absence, averaging 29 points and 13 rebounds for the series, including 42 and 15 in Game 3. The division finals brought the New Orleans Buccaneers, starring Gerald Govin, Jimmy Jones, and Red Robbins. Oakland would sweep them as Gary Brads played extremely well, averaging 27 and 11. The Oaks faced the Indiana Pacers in the ABA Finals with their core of Bob Needlicki, Roger Brown, Freddie Lewis, and Mel Daniels. Oakland won in 5 games, capturing the title, as Warren averaged 33 points and 12 rebounds, along with 20 points each from Gary and Doug. Even though they had just won the championship, the Oaks still struggled to fill the seats, as they were essentially competing with the San Francisco Warriors for the same fans, as they were the only NBA team at the time to be in such close proximity to an NBA team. Even with the celebrity power of Pat Boone and Rick Barry, the Oaks were only averaging about 2,500 fans a game. Pat Boone and his ownership group were facing foreclosure on the loan they received from Bank of America, so they sold the team to DC lawyer Earl Foreman, who moved the team to Washington, DC in 1969, renaming them the Washington Caps. For some reason, The team still remained in the Western Division, so they had the longest road trips in the league, but the move to the nation's capital didn't help their attendance figures go up. In addition to the fact that the arena that they played in was old and in desperate need of repairs, they also moved to DC at an extremely bad time, as the surrounding near northeast neighborhood was still recovering from the 1968 race riots. Fans feared that the neighborhood wasn't safe, so attendance figures were still low. However, on the court, the Caps had hired recently retired Al Bianchi as their head coach. Warren and Rick both had all-star seasons, but they both struggled with injuries. The Caps received good minutes from Mike Barrett, George Carter, Ira Harge, and Larry Brown, who led the league in assists again. They had even signed Dane Bing from the Detroit Pistons to a futures contract, but he would never play for them. Washington had the worst defense in the league, but they had the second best offense with the fastest pace, finishing 44-40, securing a division semifinal rematch with the Rockets. Denver was pretty much the same team from last year, but they now had Spencer Haywood, who was the league MVP as a 20-year-old rookie. The Caps were also able to get Barry back for this series as well. This was an extremely high-scoring series, as both teams averaged over 120 points a game. Even though Rick put up 52 points in Game 7, the Caps still lost 143-119. He averaged 40 and 10 for the series, while Spencer Haywood averaged 36 and 20. In 1970, there were talks of a merger with the NBA, as from the very beginning, the ABA was already looking to merge like the AFL did with the NFL years earlier. ABA officials would promise potential team buyers that their initial investments would more than double, seeing that an NBA expansion team had a higher value than an ABA expansion team. But the presence of the Caps in Washington, D.C. was a major roadblock to this. Abe Pollin, who owned the Baltimore Bullets, wanted to move his team to Washington, but he didn't want the Caps there. The other ABA owners persuaded Foreman to move his team for the second time in 2 years, so he decided to go to Virginia, renaming them the Virginia Squires. This move angered Pollin, as he viewed this as an attempt to steal away the fans of Northern Virginia, who mostly supported Washington sports. Abe would ensure that Virginia was never admitted to the NBA in a merger situation. The final nail in the coffin that blocked the initial merger attempt was Oscar Robinson's lawsuit against the NBA in 1970, which ended the reserve clause, which meant a player's rights were still retained by a team even after their contract expired. This lawsuit also resulted in most of the free agency rules now being used by the NBA. The Squires would be a regional franchise, as although they were based in Norfolk, they would play home games in several cities, such as Hampton, Richmond, and Roanoke. Rick Barry was unhappy with the move to Virginia, as he had issues with Southerners, even telling Sports Illustrated, "My son Scooter is supposed to go to nursery school this year. I hate to think of the complications that'll cause in Virginia. I don't want him to go down there to school and learn to speak with a Southern accent. He'll come home from school saying, 'Hi y'all, Dad.' I sure don't want that." As you might expect, these comments offended a lot of people, so Rick was traded to the New York Nets on September 1st for a draft pick and $200,000. Although the comments were a factor to the trade, Foreman was still struggling to support the team and had to trade Rick to help meet his expenses. The Squires signed rookie guard Charlie Scott and forward George Irving. They also signed big man Neil Johnson from the Phoenix Suns, as he would become their enforcer and a fan favorite. Doug Moe returned to Virginia after a season with the Carolina Cougars. Charlie absolutely dominated his rookie season, averaging 27, 5, and 5, sharing the Rookie of the Year award with Dan Issel, while Neil averaged 13 and 9, making the All-Star game, along with George Carter, who averaged 19 and 8. The Squires had the best offense in the league, while their defense finally wasn't the worst, so they finished 55 and 29, facing off against Rick Barry and the New York Nets in the semifinals. Barry averaged 34 and 12, while Billy Paultz averaged 20 and 15. But the Nets lost in 6 as Charlie averaged 25, 7, and 6. Virginia faced the Kentucky Colonels in the division finals, who starred rookie Dan Issel, Louis Dampier, and Darryl Carrier. The Colonels would win in 6 as Issel averaged 34 and 15. In 1972, the Squires made the biggest signing in franchise history when they added Julius Irving from UMass, who captivated fans with his scoring and his athletic ability. Now the Squires had another star to pair with Charlie Scott, as the team became mostly a two-man show, but fans were optimistic that they could compete for a title. Charlie averaged the league-leading 35 points a game, while Irving averaged 27 points and 16 rebounds. But seemingly out of nowhere, Charlie left the team a few weeks before the playoffs, claiming that the Squires had defaulted on his contract, as he would sign with the Phoenix Suns a few days later. Although the Squires were granted an injunction that forbade him from playing on any other team for 60 days, the Suns had already gotten their own court decision. Since the Suns didn't play any games in Virginia, the Squires or the NBA couldn't do anything about it, so Virginia had lost their leading scorer going into the playoffs. The Squires faced the Floridians in the first round, as they were led by Matt Calvin, Warren Jabali, and Willie Long. The Squires easily swept them, as Erving averaged 38 points, 19 rebounds, and 6.5 assists, including 53 points and 14 rebounds in Game 3. The Squires faced the New York Nets in the division finals, as this would be a close series, with the home team each taking 3 games. But Irving's 35 points and 20 rebounds wasn't enough, as Virginia lost by 6 in Game 7. In 1972, Virginia had signed Bob McAdoo, but he was allowed to walk, and he jumped to the Buffalo Braves at the NBA for $200,000. Erving had also tried to leave Virginia in the fall, as he had agreed to a 5-year, $1.4 million contract with the Atlanta Hawks. But ABA Commissioner Bob Carlson filed a suit, and a federal judge issued an injunction, forcing him to stay in Virginia. The Squires had also signed young forward George Gervin out of Eastern Michigan, who was a slightly less athletic version of Erving. Julius still had a great individual sophomore season, leading the league in minutes and also scoring, averaging 32 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.5 steals, and 2 blocks, finishing second in MVP voting behind Billy Cunningham. Fatty Taylor led the league in steals, while Gervin averaged 14 in his first season, finishing third in Rookie of the Year voting. Despite Irving's amazing season, the Squires were an average team, finishing 42-42, facing the Colonels, who still had Issel, but now they also had Rick Mount and Artis Gilmore. Kentucky would make quick work of Virginia, winning in 5 games. The 1973 season was the beginning of the end for Virginia, as they were unable to pay Irving his desired salary, so he was traded to the Nets for George Carter and cash. Since Irving was a fan favorite, season ticket holders in Virginia were very upset. 17 games into the season, promising center Sven Nader was sold to the Spurs for cash, as he would go on to be an All-Star and win Rookie of the Year. George Gervin had shown flashes of his potential in the playoffs last season, as now he had all the freedom, so he averaged 25 points and 8 rebounds in the first half of the season, as he was playing so well that some fans were able to forgive the loss of Erving. Earl Foreman was still in a deep financial hole though, so he wanted to sell the team, but he wanted to get the most money for his players first. During the 1974 ABA All-Star Game, there were rumblings that the Squires had sold George to the Spurs for cash. The rumors became even more real as the Associated Press reported on it. The Squires fans were extremely angry at this news, along with Mike Storin, the ABA commissioner, as he opposed the deal on the grounds that trading away the Squires' only remaining star would make them unattractive to potential buyers. But sometime between when the deal was signed and when it was supposed to take effect, Foreman got cold feet and tried to back out of the deal. In response, Spurs owner Angelo Drossis filed a lawsuit against Foreman and the Squires, forcing them to finish the deal, even as Storin tried to call a news conference to say that George would stay in Virginia. But even after the conference, a judge granted a restraining order stating that he could only play for the Spurs for at least 10 days. On February 8th, Foreman had sold the Squires to a group of Norfolk businessmen who said they would try to regain Gervin by any means necessary. Storin had even tried to offer a compromise, where Virginia would keep Gervin and give the Spurs back his $225,000 sale price, plus interest and attorney's fees, and the Spurs would get George Carter instead. Drossis agreed, but the new owners of Virginia were against it. The judge was outraged about the way that Gervin was being handled, so he granted a preliminary injunction in the favor of the Spurs, saying that Storin didn't have the authority to block the deal, as George would remain with the Spurs, as Storin decided not to pursue the matter any further. After losing their other young star, the Squires were near the bottom of the league in both offense and defense, finishing 28-56, but they were still able to secure the last playoff spot in the Eastern Division, facing off against the Nets in the semifinals, who featured Julius Irving, the player they had given away the year before. George Carter and Jim Eakins did the best they could in the series, but they were outmatched completely as the Squires lost in 5 games. While selling their stars helped keep the team afloat, the fans had alienated themselves in 1974, with some even saying that Earl Foreman had sold out the team. The new owners of the Squires were strapped for cash, as they inherited a team that was without its most talented players. The team was constantly changing their uniforms and shuffling around players, with the only bright spot being an all-star season from guard Dave Twardzik. Virginia continued to lose and lose and lose as they finished 15-69. There was trouble off the court as well when guard Barry Parkhill sued the team after his paychecks bounced, as he was owed $24,000 in back pay as well as $360,000 in the anticipated breach of contract costs. 1975 wasn't just a bad year for Virginia. It was bad for the entire league, as the San Diego Sails and the Utah Stars had folded within the first month of the season due to financial constraints, leaving the ABA with only 9 teams, while the NBA had 18 teams by this point. Longtime coach Al Bianchi was fired 7 games into the season, as the Squires went through 4 more head coaches this season, while attendance figures plummeted as they were at the bottom of the league again, finishing 15-68. On December 10th, the players turned down a proposal to defer a third of their salaries in order to help the struggling franchise. The team was nearly shut down for good in February 1976. They managed to stay afloat only by the sale of advertising banners and a $250,000 bank loan. But this was only a temporary solution as new NBA Commissioner Dave DeBusschere canceled the franchise on May 10th after it failed to meet the minimum financial requirements. Due to their poor financial situation and the continued opposition from Bullets owner Abe Pollan, the NBA decided that regional franchises couldn't work. They also decided that none of Virginia's cities were big enough to support an NBA team on their own. And since Virginia folded only a month before the official NBA merger, none of its owners received any compensation. In all reality, the Squires were doomed from the start, as they tried to compete with the Warriors, who were already a popular team in the NBA, so they struggled to fill the seats, even after they won a championship. Their move to Washington was badly timed, considering the recent race riots and the safety concerns from the public. Their time in Virginia was marred by Rick Barry's offensive comments, Charlie Scott's abrupt departure, and Earl Foreman's desperation to meet his expenses, leading to him selling the team's stars, eventually tanking the franchise. It almost seemed like the steady decline of the Squires was a representation of the steady decline of the ABA, but it's always nice to think about what could have been. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys. This was a different type of video I wanted to do. This is a lot of research I really had to do, like going into business types of things, not just NBA stats and stuff. I really want to look more into the ABA because it was such a fever dream, like a weird experiment. It was only around for 7 years, but there was so much history in that really short time period that I really want to look at. But let me know what you guys think about this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate you guys. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Thank you. I'm out. Peace.